Welcome to my YouTube channel. Hit the like button, share your thoughts, subscribe and tap the bell icon. The man shouted across the sand. His voice didn't sound like someone enjoying a vacation. It carried sharpness. It sliced through the breeze and hit people like a slap. You call that surfing? My yacht turns better than that. Heads turned. No one laughed. A few kids looked confused. One older man lowered his newspaper. A couple sitting near the shoreline exchanged glances. The surfer stayed quiet. He carried his board under his arm and stepped out of the water. Salt water ran down his tanned back. His legs were strong. His eyes looked down, not because he was scared. His silence felt heavier than the rich man's loud insults. But the man wasn't done. You trying to impress someone, beach boy? Maybe show off for the locals? He scoffed and took a sip from his crystal tumbler. The surfer didn't flinch. He reached the dry part of the sand and set his board down. The sea behind him glittered, but the tension in the air made everything else feel darker. A woman sat beside the man in the lounger. She wore gold bangles and a scarf that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She kept her eyes behind big sunglasses. But even those couldn't hide her discomfort. "Lars," she whispered. "Stop. You're making a scene." Lars didn't care. He leaned forward. His voice dropped, but the words still stung. "He's not even good. Thinks he's some beach warrior. People like him don't belong on this kind of coast." Now the surfer looked up. He didn't smile. His eyes met Lars's, calm but unblinking. "You're standing too close to the edge." Lars frowned. "What edge?" The surfer didn't answer. He picked up his board and walked toward the rocks. He moved like he didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not even the waves questioned him. Lars stood up. His chair creaked behind him. His drink slipped in the sand. "You deaf or just full of yourself?" The surfer didn't turn around. A boy nearby asked his mother, "Is he talking to a superhero?" The mom hushed him. Lars's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, but the woman beside him pulled him back. "Let it go. You embarrassed yourself enough already." But Lars wasn't listening anymore. He hated that silence. He hated the calm. He hated the fact that a man with no money, no shoes, and no fame had just left him speechless in front of everyone. The surfer disappeared behind the rocks. Lars stared at the place where he vanished. A teenager walked past with a coconut in his hand. He glanced at Lars and smirked. "You got schooled, old man." Lars didn't respond. He sat back down. The breeze felt colder now. 15 minutes passed. Then Lars stood again. Quietly. Without telling anyone. He walked toward the edge of the beach. His steps were stiff. He passed the snack stalls and the jet ski rentals. A local guide asked, "Want a boat ride, sir?" Lars waved him off. He stopped at the shore. His yacht floated far out, just like always. Untouched. White. Elegant. It looked like a mansion. Resting on blue velvet. The pride of his money. The symbol of his control. But his eyes searched for something else. He spotted the surfer again, alone, far out, barely visible. A dark figure against the sunlight. Then something else caught his eye. A ripple. It didn't move like the waves. It moved under them. Then he saw a fin. No. Two. He took a step back. He looked again. The fins dipped beneath the surface. His pulse quickened. His feet felt heavy. He turned toward the lifeguard station. Back at the beach chairs, the woman noticed his strange look. She stood and walked toward him. "What is it?" she asked. "There's something in the water," he said. "What?" He pointed. "There. Just now. There were fins. Big ones." The lifeguard approached. "You saw something, sir?" Lars nodded. "Sharks, maybe." The lifeguard looked out. His eyes scanned the distance. "Nobody reported sharks today. The waters are usually clear." "I know what I saw," Lars snapped. "And that guy. He's right in their path." The lifeguard reached for his binoculars. People began to gather. A woman in a blue bikini gasped. "He's so far out." Someone whispered, "Didn't he warn that man earlier?" A man asked, "You mean the surfer warned you?" Lars didn't answer. He just stared. The surfer still sat calmly on his board. He wasn't paddling. He wasn't moving. The sea below him looked calm. But Lars's gut told him it wasn't. A small crowd formed near the waterline. The lifeguard radioed something. Another beach patrol team rushed in with a jet ski. But Lars couldn't stop staring at the man who had said just one thing. "You're standing too close to the edge." Now Lars felt it. That edge. That invisible line. And he had crossed it. Farther out, the surfer lowered one hand into the water. He touched something cold. A shape passed below his board. Silent. Heavy. He didn't panic. His face stayed still. He didn't try to paddle away. He looked down again. Then he did something strange. He closed his eyes. On shore, the lifeguard shouted into the radio. "He's not responding. He's just sitting there." A girl in a sun hat cried out, "Something's under him." People started recording with their phones. The woman beside Lars gripped his arm. "You need to say something," she said. "I mocked him," Lars whispered. "I mocked a man who warned me." She stared at him. "Then don't just stand here." The jet ski shot across the water. But it was slow. Too slow. A shape surfaced near the surfer. Then another. The surfer didn't flinch. Then the board tipped slightly. And he disappeared into the water. Screams rose behind Lars. He couldn't move. He heard someone cry out, "He's gone." The lifeguard's voice echoed over the radio. "Lost visual." "Repeat, we've lost him." Someone yelled, "Dive. Dive now." The jet ski rider jumped in. But the sea swallowed everything. Lars fell to his knees. His head dropped. For the first time in years, he didn't feel rich. He didn't feel powerful. He felt small. Useless. He remembered the surfer's words again. Not just the warning. He remembered the silence that followed. A silence that now felt louder than any voice. Then, out of nowhere, a shout rang out. "Over there." The crowd turned. A figure broke the surface near the rocks. It was the surfer. He pulled himself up onto a jagged ledge. His board floated beside him. His chest rose and fell. But his face looked different. He didn't look scared. He looked certain. He stood up slowly. The crowd erupted. Cheers. Applause. Gasps. People clapped. Others cried. But the surfer didn't wave. He didn't smile. He looked straight at Lars. Then he raised his hand, and pointed toward the water. Everyone turned. Then they saw it. Something large drifted up from below. A shape with smooth skin. Gray. Faint scars. Not a shark. Not a dolphin. Something else. Dead. The lifeguard reached it first. Then he called out, confused. It's a body. Human. Gasps spread like wildfire. A man near Lars asked, what's going on? Another asked, who is he? Lars didn't speak. The surfer stayed where he was. Standing tall. Alone. Watching. The crowd stood frozen. The lifeguard pulled the body closer. His hands moved fast, but his eyes showed confusion. The waves didn't resist. The water gave up the body like it had been waiting for this moment. Lars stepped forward. His knees shook. He wanted to turn away, but something held him there. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the look on the surfer's face, still calm, still distant, like he already knew what was about to unfold. The lifeguard knelt beside the body. He checked for a pulse. Then he checked again. Someone asked, is he alive? The lifeguard shook his head. No. He's gone. The beach fell silent. Lars couldn't look away from the face of the dead man. The skin looked pale. The chest didn't rise. There were bruises around his neck. His eyes were shut tight. The woman beside Lars spoke under her breath, do you know him? Lars stared harder. The answer came slowly. I think I do. Police arrived 10 minutes later. Tourists stepped back. Some started to leave. Others stayed close, holding their kids, whispering about what they just saw. 2 officers walked over to Lars. They asked him a simple question. Did you witness anything unusual today? He nodded. The surfer saw something. Then he disappeared under the water. Then, that body came up. The younger officer narrowed his eyes. You didn't see what pulled the body up? No, Lars said. But the man who was surfing, he knew something. He was too calm. The older officer turned toward the rocks. Where is he now? The surfer sat on the edge of the rocks again. His board rested beside him. His back faced the crowd. He didn't move. A young cop walked up and said, we need to talk. The surfer stood and faced him. He didn't protest. He just nodded and followed the officer down the rocks. The sun had dropped lower. The shadows on the beach stretched long. People kept talking. Who was the dead guy? Did the surfer know him? Was it murder? The questions floated like dust in the air. Lars stood still. But his mind raced. They brought the surfer under a beach canopy where the officers took statements. He sat on a wooden bench. His wet shirt clung to his back. Sand stuck to his arms. One officer asked, do you know the victim? The surfer nodded. I've seen him. Where? In the same ocean. But not today. The officer leaned forward. We need details. The surfer looked up. You think I'm hiding something? The officer said, you were in the water near a floating body. That makes you part of the scene. The surfer nodded again. I didn't kill him. But I knew he was there. How? I felt it. The ocean told me. The officer raised an eyebrow. The ocean told you? The surfer shrugged. Call it instinct. Or something else. Another officer stepped in. You're saying the water warned you? The surfer didn't blink. Yes. The officers exchanged looks. One of them walked away and spoke into his radio. The other stayed close to the surfer. Name? Zane. Last name? Don't have one. The officer paused. Everyone has one. Not me. Lars watched from a distance. His jaw tightened. The woman beside him asked again, do you know the dead man? He took a deep breath. Years ago, I did business in Southeast Asia. One of the men on that trip went missing. They said he drowned. No body. No trace. Just vanished. She whispered, "You think this is him?" Lars nodded slowly. That face, it's older now. But yes. I think it's him. A child nearby overheard and gasped. People started murmuring again. The story was spreading fast. Later that evening, the body was taken away in a black van. Police marked off a section of the beach. Tourists were told to leave. Lars stayed behind. He waited until the officers finished questioning Zane. Then he walked over. Zane didn't look surprised to see him. Lars spoke first. Who was he? Zane didn't answer. You knew him, didn't you? Zane turned toward the sea. I know many who go missing. Lars stepped closer. You pulled him up. No, Zane said. The sea did. I just waited. Lars stared. How long was he under? Zane replied, long enough for everyone to forget him. Lars whispered, but you didn't forget. Zane shook his head. The ocean remembers everything. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lars asked the question that had been burning inside him since the body surfaced. Why did you warn me? Zane replied without hesitation. You were too loud. Too proud. The sea doesn't like that. Lars laughed bitterly. So the sea punishes pride now? Zane's eyes narrowed. No. The sea reflects it. And then it removes it. The night rolled in quietly. Lars returned to his yacht. He sat alone at the dining table. The lights were too bright. The food tasted dry. His drink sat untouched. The woman didn't say much. She just watched him. Lars looked across the water. The moonlight danced on the waves. But he didn't feel peace. He felt hunted. Not by a person. Not by the law. But by a truth he didn't understand yet. At midnight, he left the yacht. He walked the beach barefoot. The sand felt cold now. He found Zane sitting on the shore, eyes closed. You live here? Zane nodded. I sleep where the tide sleeps. Lars sat beside him. He didn't care about his white pants or his polished shoes anymore. I lied to you earlier, Lars said. I did know that man. His name was Derek Vaughan. We worked together. He was smart. Ambitious. But he made enemies. Zane didn't open his eyes. Did you kill him? No, Lars said. But I didn't stop what happened to him. Zane opened his eyes slowly. Then the sea waited for you. Lars looked away. What does that mean? It means, Zane said, the dead don't always drift alone. Sometimes they wait for those who left them behind. Lars sat in silence. Zane stood and began walking into the water. Lars called out, What are you? Zane turned his head slightly. I'm the message. The next morning, the media arrived. The story hit headlines fast. Mysterious body found in tourist beach, local surfer linked to the discovery. Billionaire present during body discovery, past connections unearthed. Lars refused all interviews. He stayed inside his yacht. Quiet. Distant. But his past kept knocking. Police returned and asked more questions. They confirmed the identity, Derek Vaughan. They also uncovered something else. Derek had left behind a journal. One of his last entries read, I'm being followed. They know I found out. If anything happens to me, check Lars. He knows. Lars read the note himself. His hands shook. Zane stood outside the police tent when Lars finished reading. Lars walked up to him. He blamed me. Zane replied, because you left him to drown. Lars snapped, I didn't push him. You didn't need to, Zane said. Silence is just as heavy. Lars returned to the shore that night. He stood at the edge again. He stared into the waves. They moved like they always did. But now, every ripple felt alive. Every splash sounded like a whisper. Zane's words echoed in his head. You were too close to the edge. And now? He wasn't sure where the edge even ended. He wasn't sure he ever left it. Lars couldn't sleep. The waves outside whispered like voices. Every sound from the sea felt personal now. The creak of the yacht. The splash of water. Even the wind carried something strange. He paced back and forth. He checked the time. 2:43 a.m. His hands trembled. He poured himself a drink, but his lips didn't touch it. Zane's words haunted him. Silence is just as heavy. He stepped outside and stood on the deck. His eyes searched the shore. The beach looked calm, but it didn't feel safe. His chest felt tight. The police had more questions. Reporters kept calling. People online began digging into his past. Old contracts. Lost partners. Buried lawsuits. They found a video clip. Derek Vaughan, 3 years ago, at a party. In the background, Lars laughed and whispered something to a man in a suit. Online users slowed the footage down. They zoomed in. They pointed to Derek's expression. One frame captured his face, tight lips, clenched jaw, narrowed eyes. Someone wrote in the comments. He knew he was being betrayed. Lars threw his phone on the floor. He sat down hard. His heart pounded. He heard footsteps. The woman he brought on the trip stood at the door. You okay? She asked. No, he said. She stepped outside. I looked him up too. Derek. You were business partners? He nodded. I didn't know it would come back, he said. She sat next to him. It always comes back. Just takes time. The next day, 2 detectives boarded the yacht. They carried photos. One of them set down a file on the table. Lars sat across from them. One said, Mr. Hansen, we found something. He kept quiet. The other detective spoke, Vaughan's last trip was connected to your offshore project. The one with the disappearing funds. Lars clenched his fists. The detective opened the file. He found out where the money went. The room fell silent. Then the detective said, and he wrote it all down. Every name. Every transfer. Including yours. Lars took a breath. That project was legal. The detective leaned forward. That doesn't mean it was clean. Lars stood up. I've cooperated. I didn't kill him. The younger detective said, then prove it. Later, Lars drove out of the town. Away from the beach. Away from the water. He needed answers. Zane had them. But he needed a second opinion. He remembered an old friend, Noah Grant. Noah used to work with the Maritime Rescue Unit. Now he worked for private investigations. He knew the ocean, and he didn't trust headlines. Lars drove through 3 towns before he found him. Noah lived near a cliff, in a cabin filled with books, charts, and coffee mugs. Noah opened the door with a raised brow. You look like hell, he said. I'm not sleeping, Lars replied. Too much guilt. Lars didn't argue. They sat near the window. Lars told him everything. The surfer. The body. The warnings. The journal. The photos. Noah listened without interrupting. Then he asked, you think the surfer brought Derek back? Lars hesitated. I don't know. But he was there. He knew something. And he said the ocean remembers. Noah poured them both coffee. Some say the sea stores things. Pain. Memory. Secrets. Lars looked up. You believe that? Noah shrugged. I've pulled bodies from it. Some came up after days. Some after weeks. Others never did. But sometimes, the ones who come back, come with a message. Lars leaned forward. What kind of message? Noah said, warning. Closure. Revenge. Depends on the story. But it's never random. Lars whispered, so I was meant to be there. Noah nodded slowly. Zane, who is he? Noah stood and walked to a shelf. He pulled out a box of photos. Old ones. Black and white. Some faded. He handed one to Lars. It showed a boy with long hair holding a surfboard near the same rocky cliff. His eyes looked sharp. Focused. But there was sadness too. That's Zane, Noah said. 10 years ago. Lars frowned. He looks the same. Noah nodded. He hasn't changed. Lars asked, is that even possible? Noah stared at the photo. He lost someone. A brother. Drowned near the reef. They never found the body. After that, Zane changed. He stopped speaking for a year. Then he came back. Started surfing alone. At night. People said he was talking to the water. Lars leaned back. What is he? Noah shrugged. Some call him cursed. Others say gifted. But I've seen him in storms that should have killed him. I've seen him pull people out of the water before lifeguards even moved. Lars closed his eyes. He said the sea gave Derek back. Noah looked at him. Then maybe it did. Lars left the cabin before sunset. His head spun with questions. He drove back toward the coast. Back to the place he tried to escape. The beach looked the same. But everything felt different now. Zane sat on the same rocks. The tide rolled in slowly. Lars walked across the sand. He didn't speak at first. He just sat near him. Quiet. Then he asked, why me? Zane kept looking at the water. Because you watched him fall. I didn't know they would kill him, Lars said. Zane turned to him. But you didn't stop them. Lars looked down. Zane continued, Derek fought back. He exposed too much. So they erased him. Lars nodded. They said he vanished during a trip. Zane said, he vanished into silence. But the sea doesn't forget betrayal. The wind grew stronger. The waves slammed the rocks below. Zane stood up. You can't bury a body in salt water and expect it to stay dead forever. Lars stood too. What do I do now? Zane stared into his eyes. You tell the truth. Or the sea will. That night, Lars made a decision. He opened his laptop. He wrote a statement. He named the project. The investors. The shell companies. The pressure. The threats. The silence. He named the people who forced Derek to disappear. He included his own guilt. He didn't try to sound like a hero. He just told the truth. Then he emailed the statement to the authorities. The next morning, a new headline appeared. Millionaire confesses to offshore fraud, breaks silence on missing partner. Lars didn't leave his yacht that day. He sat and waited. Police called. They wanted him in custody. He didn't resist. Before he left, he walked one last time along the shore. Zane waited there. Lars said, "They'll arrest me." Zane nodded. "Will it matter?" Lars asked. Zane pointed toward the horizon. "That's not for me to decide." Lars took a breath. Was Derek's body really under there all this time? Zane answered softly. "Yes." The sea waited. Lars stared at the waves. They looked endless. But they weren't empty. As police drove him away, he looked back at the beach. Zane stood still. The water touched his feet. But it never pulled him under. Lars sat alone in the cold white room. The air smelled like bleach. The walls had no clocks. No windows. Only silence. He had told everything. He had signed the confession. He had named them all. Still, the room felt heavier than any courtroom. A knock broke the silence. A woman in a black suit stepped in. She placed a folder in front of him. "You're not the only one," she said. He opened the folder. Inside were copies of emails. Transaction trails. Voice notes. Hidden recordings. It wasn't just him. The others had been recorded too. Someone had been watching the whole time. Lars looked up. "Where did this come from?" She answered, "Anonymous source. Sent from an encrypted ID. The files go back 7 years." His throat dried up. 7? She nodded. "Every deal. Every name. Even meetings we didn't know happened." Lars leaned back. His chest tightened. "He was tracking all of us," he whispered. "Not just him," she said. "Whoever helped him left a trail too. Someone close. Someone who knew." He whispered, "Someone alive." 2 weeks passed. The case spread everywhere. News anchors repeated Lars's name. Online threads broke down every piece. Commenters called it one of the biggest betrayals in the business world. But the strangest twist wasn't the money. It was the body. Divers returned to the rocky beach where Derek's remains had surfaced. But something strange happened. When they returned to the reef to examine the site, the spot had changed. No bones. No remains. Nothing. The tide had swallowed it again. Reporters rushed back to the beach. They asked about Zane. Locals gave strange answers. "He lives alone. He never takes money. He speaks to the sea." One man said, "He's not just a surfer. He's something else." Inside the holding unit, Lars received a letter. It had no return address. Inside was a single photo. Derek. Alive. The photo showed him standing on a dock in South America. His beard had grown. His eyes still sharp. Behind him stood a wooden shack. Faded graffiti on the wall said, "No silence here." Lars dropped the photo. His heart beat louder than the guard's footsteps. He turned the paper over. One line was written in dark ink. "Truth doesn't drown. It floats." That night, Lars didn't sleep again. His thoughts raced. If Derek was alive, then who was buried under the water? Had the sea played tricks? Or had Derek escaped before the fall? Lars whispered, "Why would he stay hidden?" The answer came quickly. Revenge. He had faked the end. Let everyone believe he was dead. Then watched from the shadows. Now, he had let Lars speak first. Now, Lars was the face of it all. A week later, prosecutors met with Lars's legal team. The lead attorney said, "We believe you didn't kill him. But the fraud charges stay." Lars asked, "What if I bring him in?" They laughed. "He's a ghost." Lars said, "I know where he might be." They gave him a deal. Lower sentence. No special treatment. but access to one travel unit. One shot. He took it. 3 days later, Lars stood on a dock in a small port in Ecuador. The air smelled of salt and diesel. He followed the markings in the photo. Each shack looked the same. Until he saw it. No silence here. He stepped closer. A man sat on a wooden stool, holding a fishing net. His eyes looked up. Derek. Alive. Lars froze. His lips didn't move. His chest tightened. Derek stood slowly. "You're late," he said. Lars stepped forward. "I thought you were dead." Derek nodded. "You were supposed to." Lars said, "Why now?" Derek stared into him. "You lied. Then you let me fall. You watched." Lars lowered his head. "I told the truth. I exposed them. I gave them everything." Derek said, "Because the sea forced you." Lars said, "Because I couldn't carry it anymore." Derek walked forward. His face was different now. Older. Tired. Sharper. "You only spoke when you thought I was gone." Lars said, "I came to find you." Derek asked, "For what? Redemption?" "No," Lars said. "Closure." Derek stayed quiet. Then said, "You won't get that from me." Lars nodded. "Then let them hear it from you." They spoke for hours. Lars told him about Zane. About the storm. About the bones. About the silence. Derek said, "The ocean doesn't bury people. It hides them until they're ready." Then Derek agreed to come back. 1 week later, news broke again. Man presumed dead for 6 years returns with explosive testimony. Headlines exploded. The case flipped. Derek's files filled in every gap Lars left behind. He exposed the others. The silencers. The men behind the fake accounts. The offshore companies. The cover-ups. Zane's name never appeared. But one reporter added a note in her column. Locals believe the surfer warned the waves. Some say he speaks for the drowned. Lars stood at the trial. He didn't ask for pity. He didn't dodge the blame. He told the court he watched a man fall and did nothing. He said, "I mocked a surfer because I thought money made me smarter. But I didn't know the sea doesn't care about money. It listens to pain." Sentencing came. 5 years. No parole for 3. Derek stood outside the courtroom when Lars was led away. He didn't wave. But he nodded. That was enough. Inside the prison walls, Lars changed. He no longer chased deals. He taught reading classes to inmates. He stopped talking to journalists. He read books about shipwrecks. Survival. Ocean myths. One day, a guard handed him a package. No name. Inside was a single thing. A small stone, smooth and white, shaped like a wave. On the back, one word was carved. Listen. Lars smiled. He understood now. Zane never needed to raise his voice. The sea did that for him. Years later, Lars stepped out of prison. He didn't return to the city. He didn't build another company. He bought a small hut near the same beach. Some days, he walked alone near the reef. Some days, he surfed. Poorly. But Zane never mocked him. He just watched. Quiet. Like always. One evening, as the sun dipped, Zane walked up beside him. He said, "You still hear it?" Lars nodded. "All the time." Zane said, "It's not over." Lars asked, "What's left?" Zane pointed at the ocean. "The tide keeps secrets. But it also keeps promises. Then he walked away. That night, Lars wrote a letter. He sealed it in a bottle. He threw it into the sea. No one ever found it. But the waves did. And sometimes, that's all that matters.